has Prigozhin finally revealed his plan for Wagner Group and reappeared in public for really the first time since the coup. Plus, we're going to be looking at Ukraine's continued offensive gains and if Russia is going to be launching a counterattack. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's July 20th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get right into it.
Guys, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Military strategists love strategy games. I know. It sounds like a farmer coming back from his field and playing Farm Simulator. But hear me out. Really managing combat at any level is an exhausting process filled with bureaucrats and annoying snags and problems at every turn. And of course, clueless bosses and even more clueless politicians telling you what you can and can't do. So, booting up a strategy game where you're in charge of everything and victory is within your grasp feels downright cathartic. That's why I wanted to talk about today's sponsor, Conflict of Nations. Conflict of Nations is a free online PvP strategy game set in a fictional World War III. You can play against 128 other players in real-time games that can sometimes take weeks to complete. You can choose a real country to lead and build your military with tons of different real-world units, including tanks, jets, nuclear submarines, and more. You can declare war on your neighbors, forge alliances, choose your own strategies, manage your tech tree, supervise your economy, and more. Even better, you can play the same account on your PC or on mobile. And if you download the link in the description, you'll get an exclusive gift, 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription time. But this offer is only available for 30 days, so check the link in the description and download Conflict of Nations and play for free today.
Okay, first, let's take a look at the control map. The biggest changes are actually one is outside of Vasily, and we can see it's right here where we're seeing Russian forces make, again, a small but not insignificant advance, particularly, again, when anytime you can cross a major defensive obstacle like this canal here, it's a sign that the offensive work is really delivering results. And again, it's not like they weren't already across it. They're on both sides of this canal. But you can see Ukrainian forces pulling back using this natural barrier here in the form of this reservoir to sort of help shore up their defenses, right? And again, just make their defensive line more efficient. But still a rare instance of real offensive output from the Russian forces. The only other change they've reported is marking this area here outside of Orkovo-Vasilievka as officially liberated. Again, this is for context north of Bakhmut. So we are seeing again a mixed bag of results here in terms of territory changes. Though Ukrainian forces, when we look at the combat map, you can see they're reporting again continued advances outside of Robotine. This town has been contested for some time, but you can see this is actually reported, according to at least this map, that Robotine is in the process of being liberated, and the last Russian lines are going to be probably pushed out of it here in the coming days. And we can also see, again, this sort of salient is steadily growing piece by piece. When we actually look back at the control map, we can see where the fortifications lie here. Let's pull this up real quick because I think this is really relevant to understand sort of where things are. So you can see that if Ukrainian forces are able to take Robotine, it'll put them about halfway to the first major Russian lines of defense. You can see there's a dual trench system here, and then a second dual trench system several kilometers to the south. And in all likelihood, these are mutually supporting points, right? Russian troops in the second trench would counterattack to drive out Ukrainian troops if they seize the first. So it's a good defensive, it's a strong defensive structure, very, very dug in. But again, Ukraine's focusing primarily on attritional warfare, right? Trying to minimize the the cost to their own forces while maximizing casualties to Russian forces. And I think that's why we're seeing these sort of marginal gains in their offensive operations. You can see Russia, again, continuing to push on offense, counterattacking outside of Prigozhin, as well as across the Donetsk region. Again, seems like Donetsk and possibly Crimean alignment are the two focuses of Russia's primary defensive fight. When we go over to the news, really to talk about Prigozhin, this is probably the real big story here, is that he's been seen in public for the first time, at least since the Wagner coup attempt. A video released Wednesday showed the mercenary chief for the first time, right, since his short-lived rebellion. And he's revealed the plan for Wagner Group going forward. The plan is pretty simple, that they are going to be training the Belarusian military. They are going to, quote, make it the second best army in the world, and that they are going to then be going to Africa. This is, again, I think a classic example of an authoritarian taking a threat to his regime and moving it as far away as humanly possible. Wagner would have a hard time driving to Moscow if they are spread out among places like the Central African Republic, Sudan, and Mali. And certainly the growing international reputation of Wagner means that probably a lot of African nations who are Russian aligned would be happy to have such a combat-tested force out there conducting training for them. What's also interesting, though, is that a number of other individuals were also seen in this video. The first is a man named Sergei, call sign Pioneer, who's going to be the Wagner commander in Belarus. Pioneer is a long-serving Wagner commander, serving in Syria, the CAR, Sudan, Mali, and other countries. But Prigozhin also took the time to frame, there's actually one other individual, Dmitry Utkin, one of the basically founding members of Wagner, thanking them for their work and making Wagner a famous name. Utkin said, "This is only the beginning of the biggest job that will be carried out soon." What was also interesting, I thought, is that Prigozhin described that Wagner, the current ongoing fight in Ukraine, is, quote, a shame in which Wagner does not need to participate. Acknowledged that Wagner may return to Ukraine when he can be sure that Wagner fighters will not be forced to, quote, shame themselves. Which I found pretty interesting, that the notion of shame and honor is so central now to sort of Prigozhin's perception, right? Prigozhin is nothing if not a truly capable spin doctor. He really has an understanding of how to sort of reframe things. And I think for him, keeping Wagner forces engaged, keeping them busy, keeping them paid are all essential to him maintaining Wagner Group, right? If, people need to eat, and soldiers are much more likely to continue to serve if they're continuing to get their paychecks. So what's next for Wagner? My guess is he's probably true. I think he's going to stay in Belarus. I think contingents of Wagner may continue to support and train African militaries who certainly are clamoring for this sort of relevant current combat training. And I think when you have I think the imminent goal rather of Prigozhin is simply to strengthen Wagner Group and to maintain them as a cohesive force with a meaningful mission. Because without Wagner Group, Prigozhin is going to be seen as very, very vulnerable. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for you. Thank you so much. Thank you to today's sponsor, and I'll see you in the next one.
Conflict of Nations is a free online PvP game set in the modern era of global war. Choose your strategy, engage in battles, and take over the world. And if you download from the link in my description, you'll get an exclusive gift, 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium time. But this offer is only good for 1 month, so click the link in the description and download Conflict of Nations today.